In the tranquil town of Fayetteville, Arkansas, a beloved real estate agent, Nolan Gray, was living what seemed to be an idyllic life. Known for his warm smile and kind heart, Nolan was a pillar of the community. But on a quiet morning in April 2015, the facade shattered when his lifeless body was discovered in his home, bludgeoned to death. As whispers of betrayal and hidden secrets began to surface, the serene streets of Fayetteville buzzed with fear and curiosity. Join us as we unravel the chilling mystery behind this shocking crime that left an entire community reeling. At 45, Nolan Gray was a successful real estate agent with Ozark Realty, noted for his large smile and cheerful personality, which won over clients and co-workers alike. Nolan Ray, who had a degree in business administration from the University of Arkansas, had built a successful career over the course of 2 decades. He was happily married to his second wife, Meliora Gray, and seemed to have the ideal family life. Meliora married his 18-year-old stepdaughter, Verity Ford, a freshman psychology student at the University of Arkansas. Nolan Ray appeared to have a positive relationship with Verity, completing the impression of a happy family. But beneath the surface, hidden conflicts and secrets would eventually emerge, resulting in an unexpected and sad ending. On the morning of April 12, 2015, at approximately 7:30 a.m., a grim discovery shattered the quiet of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Nolan Gray, a beloved real estate agent, was found dead in his home. The harrowing scene was uncovered by his neighbor, Connell Harvey, a 52-year-old retired schoolteacher who lived next door. Meliora Gray, Nolan Ray's wife, had called Connell in distress. She hadn't heard from her husband since the previous night and was out of town visiting her sister. She asked Connell to check on him. Connell knocked on the Gray house door but received no answer. Nolan Ray's car was still in the driveway, prompting Connell to try the door, which to his surprise was unlocked. Upon entering, he was immediately struck by an eerie silence. Calling out for Nolan, Ray yielded no response. As Connell ventured further into the house, he noticed signs of a violent struggle. Overturned chairs and broken glass littered the kitchen floor. Following the chaotic trail to the master bedroom, he encountered a horrific sight. Nolan Ray lay lifeless in a pool of blood, having been brutally bludgeoned with a hammer that lay nearby, stained with blood. The room bore the evidence of a desperate fight, with blood splattered across the walls and furniture. It was evident that Nolan Ray had fiercely fought for his life. Connell was horrified and immediately backed out of the room, his breath catching in his throat. His hands shaking uncontrollably, he pulled out his cell phone and dialed 911. His voice, barely steady, trembled as he described the gruesome scene he had stumbled upon. The 911 operator, sensing his distress, gently urged him to stay calm and remain on the line until the police arrived. The news of Nolan Gray's untimely death spread like wildfire through the tight-knit neighborhood. Maple Street soon buzzed with activity, swarming with police cars and officers canvassing the area. Curious neighbors gathered in small clusters, whispering in hushed tones about the shocking event that had unfolded in their peaceful community. Local news stations like KFSM and KNWA quickly dispatched reporters to the scene, and by noon the tragedy dominated headlines throughout Fayetteville. Connell, reeling from the shock, found it difficult to reconcile the brutal reality with the vibrant memory of his friend. Speaking to reporters with a heavy heart, he struggled to articulate his disbelief and sorrow. "Nolan Ray was a good man," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "He didn't deserve such a terrible fate." As the day wore on, the community mourned the loss of a cherished friend and neighbor, grappling with the profound impact of the violence that had shattered their serene world. The discovery of Nolan Gray's body marked the beginning of a complex and tragic investigation, one that would uncover hidden secrets and lead to shocking revelations about those closest to him. Detectives Halcyon Cook and Ivor Jenkins arrived to lead the investigation. Detective Halcyon Cook was known for her sharp attention to detail. At 38 years old, she had solved many difficult cases. Her partner, Detective Ivor Jenkins, was 42 and had a reputation for his methodical approach. Together they made a strong team. As the detectives walked through the house, they saw signs of a struggle. The living room had overturned chairs and broken glass. The kitchen had more chaos, with dishes scattered on the floor. When they reached the master bedroom, they were met with a grisly scene. Nolan Gray lay on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. He had been bludgeoned to death with a hammer which lay nearby, covered in blood. The walls and furniture were splattered with blood, showing the violence of the attack. Detective Cook noted the hammer as the murder weapon and ordered it to be bagged as evidence. The crime scene was chaotic and disturbing. The detectives and forensic team took many photos and collected samples. They used gloves to carefully pick up items, making sure not to contaminate any evidence. Blood samples, fingerprints and the hammer were all collected and sent to the lab for analysis. Outside, neighbours watched as the police worked. The local news stations KFSM and KNWA were there too, reporting on the shocking murder. Reporters spoke to neighbours who described Nolan Ray as a friendly and well-liked man. The media coverage added pressure to solve the case quickly. Detectives Cook and Jenkins interviewed Connell Harvey, who was still shaken from discovering the body. He described finding the door unlocked and seeing the mess inside the house. His detailed account helped the detectives piece together the events leading up to the murder. By the end of the day, the police had gathered a lot of evidence but still had many questions. Who could have committed such a brutal act? Why would someone want to kill Nolan Ray? The detectives knew they had a difficult case ahead of them, but they were determined to find the answers. The first suspect in Nolan Gray's murder was his wife, Meliora Gray. Meliora was 34 years old and worked as an accountant for a local firm called Razorback Accounting. She was intelligent, meticulous, and hard-working. Meliora had a tough past. She became a mother at 16 and worked as a stripper to support herself and her daughter Verity. Despite these challenges, she built a successful career and was known for her strong-willed nature. Detectives Halcyon Cook and Ivor Jenkins brought Meliora in for questioning on April 13, 2015. Meliora appeared calm, but was clearly distressed. She maintained that she had been out of town visiting her sister Nancy in Little Rock. She provided photos and text messages to support her alibi, but the detectives still had doubts. During the interrogation, Meliora spoke about her relationship with Nolan Ray. She admitted they had been arguing more lately, mainly about his work and the amount of time he spent away from home. She denied any involvement in his death, insisting she loved her husband despite their problems. The detectives asked Meliora about the night of the murder. She explained that she had left for Little Rock on the afternoon of April 11th and stayed with Nancy until the morning of April 12th. Nancy confirmed this story when the detectives called her. However, they couldn't ignore the tension in Meliora's voice when she spoke about Nolan Ray and the changes she noticed in Verity. The police also searched Meliora's car and belongings for any evidence. They found nothing directly linking her to the murder, but they did find a diary in which Meliora had written about her frustrations and suspicions. These entries painted a picture of a woman under immense stress and emotional turmoil. Despite her alibi, Meliora remained a prime suspect. The detectives continued to look into her past, interviewing friends, family and co-workers. They hoped to find a motive or any clue that could tie her to the crime. The pressure on Meliora grew as the investigation progressed, but she remained steadfast in her innocence. The second suspect in Nolan Gray's murder was his stepdaughter, Verity Ford. Verity was 18 years old and a freshman at the University of Arkansas, where she was studying psychology. She was known for her outgoing and sociable personality. Her friends described her as bright and ambitious, always eager to learn new things. Verity had a complicated relationship with her stepfather, Nolan Ray. It was revealed during the investigation that their relationship had evolved into a secret affair. This affair made Verity feel guilty and conflicted, especially as she saw the strain it put on her mother, Meliora. Detectives Halcyon Cook and Ivor Jenkins brought Verity in for questioning on April 14, 2015. Verity appeared nervous but cooperative. She admitted to the affair with Nolan Ray, explaining that it had started about 6 months earlier. She said she had been feeling lonely and confused, and Nolan Ray had been there for her. She insisted she never wanted to hurt anyone. During the interrogation, Verity explained how she had confided in a close friend about the affair and her feelings of guilt. This friend, whose name was not disclosed, confirmed Verity's story to the detectives. Verity described the last time she saw Nolan Ray, which was the night before his death. She said they had argued about the affair and the impact it was having on their family. The detectives asked Verity about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. Verity said she had been at a friend's house studying for a midterm exam. Her friend confirmed this alibi, saying that Verity had stayed there until the early morning hours of April 12th. Despite the alibi, The detectives were suspicious of the emotional turmoil that Verity was going through. The police also searched Verity's dorm room and her belongings for any evidence. They found nothing directly linking her to the murder, but did find several letters and notes between her and Nolan Ray. These notes showed the depth of their relationship and the emotional struggles they both faced. Despite her alibi and the lack of direct evidence, Verity remained a prime suspect due to the affair and the emotional tension it created. The detectives continued to interview her friends and classmates, hoping to find any inconsistencies or new leads. The pressure on Verity grew as the investigation continued, but she maintained her innocence and expressed deep regret for the affair. On April 17, 2015, 5 days after Nolan Gray's murder, the police received a significant break in the case. It was a cool, foggy morning when a jogger discovered a suspicious item in the park near Beaver Lake. He noticed a plastic bag partially buried under some leaves near a bench. Curious, he opened it and found a blood-stained shirt and a pair of gloves. He immediately called the police, and within minutes patrol officers Karen Lewis and Tom Martinez arrived at the scene. They secured the area and called in detectives Halcyon Cook and Ivor Jenkins. Detectives Cook and Jenkins brought Verity in for a second round of questioning. This time, Verity was visibly more nervous. She claimed she had gone to the park to clear her head and had no idea about the bloody items. The detectives pressed her for more details, but Verity stuck to her story, albeit shakily. The forensic team continued their analysis and found another critical piece of evidence: hair fibers on the gloves that matched Meliora Gray's DNA. This discovery complicated the case further and indicated the possible involvement of both mother and daughter. On April 18, 2015, the detectives called Meliora back for questioning. She seemed calm but concerned. When presented with the new evidence, Meliora admitted to knowing about the gloves but insisted she had nothing to do with the murder. She said she had worn the gloves while gardening and couldn't explain how they ended up near Beaver Lake. The police were now more determined than ever to solve the case. They knew they were close to uncovering the truth but needed to carefully piece together the final puzzle. The discovery of the new evidence was a pivotal moment in the investigation, providing crucial leads and intensifying the search for Nolan Ray's murderer. The third suspect in the murder of Nolan Gray was his ex-wife, Edna Gray. Edna, aged 46, was known for her hot-tempered and aggressive nature. She had a contentious relationship with Nolan Ray and had never approved of his marriage to Meliora. Edna lived in Fayetteville and worked as a manager at a local grocery store, Harp's Food Stores. Detectives Halcyon Cook and Ivor Jenkins decided to bring Edna in for questioning on April 19, 2015. Edna arrived at the police station appearing defiant and uncooperative. She had a reputation for speaking her mind and not holding back her opinions. During the interrogation, Edna admitted that she and Nolan Ray had a rocky relationship. She described their marriage as tumultuous and full of arguments. Edna expressed her disdain for Meliora, calling her a homewrecker and blaming her for the end of her marriage. However, Edna vehemently denied any involvement in Nolan Ray's murder. The detectives pressed Edna about her whereabouts on the night of April 11, 2015. Edna claimed she was at home watching TV and drinking wine. She mentioned watching an episode of The Tale of Rose and going to bed early. There were no witnesses to confirm her alibi, which made the detectives suspicious. The police searched Edna's home for any evidence that could link her to the crime. They found a few items of interest, including a set of gardening gloves similar to the ones found at the park. However, forensic analysis showed no blood or DNA on these gloves. Despite her alibi and the lack of direct evidence, the detectives continued to probe Edna's potential motive. They discovered that Edna had recently learned about Nolan Ray's affair with Verity, which added another layer of tension and potential anger. Friends and co-workers told the detectives that Edna had been particularly upset and vocal about the affair, calling Nolan Ray a disgrace and expressing her anger to anyone who would listen. The detectives also interviewed Edna's neighbors, who reported hearing loud arguments coming from her house in the days leading up to the murder. One neighbor, Mrs. Harvey, said she heard Edna yelling about betrayal and lies. Although Edna remained a suspect, the detectives found it challenging to gather enough evidence to charge her. She was aggressive during the interrogation but maintained her innocence. The detectives knew they needed more concrete evidence to link her to the crime. The investigation into Edna Gray added another layer of complexity to the case as the detectives worked tirelessly to piece together the events leading to Nolan Ray's murder. On April 21, 2015, the breakthrough in Nolan Gray's murder case finally came. After days of investigating, detectives Halcyon Cook and Ivor Jenkins found a crucial piece of evidence. A surveillance camera from a nearby gas station had captured footage of Meliora Gray driving toward Beaver Lake late on the night of the murder. This was a significant lead that contradicted Meliora's alibi. Detectives Cook and Jenkins reviewed the footage carefully. It showed Meliora's car, a blue Mazda, passing the gas station at around 11:30 p.m. on April 11th. This placed her near the crime scene at the crucial time. With this new evidence, the detectives were confident they had found Nolan Ray's killer. On the morning of April 22, 2015, the police arrived at Meliora Gray's workplace, Razorback Accounting. It was a sunny day, and the local news stations, including KFSM and KNWA, were already covering the latest developments in the case. Meliora was in her office when the police entered. She looked surprised, but remained composed as they informed her of her arrest for the murder of her husband. As Meliora was led out in handcuffs, she maintained her innocence, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. The affair between Nolan Ray and Verity had driven Meliora into a fit of rage. She felt deeply betrayed by both her husband and her daughter. The detectives believed that on the night of the murder, Meliora confronted Nolan Ray. The confrontation escalated into violence, and Meliora grabbed a hammer, fatally striking him multiple times. Meliora's arrest shocked the community. Neighbors and friends couldn't believe that the hard-working, intelligent woman they knew was capable of such a violent act. The news spread quickly, with headlines in the Fayetteville Observer and segments on local news stations detailing the arrest. Nolan Ray's family had mixed reactions. Some were relieved that the murderer had been caught, while others were devastated by the betrayal. Verity was particularly heartbroken. She had lost both her stepfather and her mother in a matter of days. The emotional toll on the family was immense. As Meliora was taken to the police station, she continued to deny her involvement. However, the detectives were confident in their findings. The surveillance footage, combined with the forensic evidence and Meliora's conflicting statements, painted a clear picture of her guilt. The community of Fayetteville was left to grapple with the tragic events. Nolan Gray's murder had uncovered deep family secrets and left a lasting impact on those who knew him. The police had solved the case, but the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. The trial of Meliora Gray for the murder of her husband, Nolan Gray, began on July 15, 2015, at the Washington County Courthouse in Fayetteville. The courtroom was packed with reporters from local news stations like KFSM and KNWA, as well as concerned members of the community. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Harold Lee, a 45-year-old with a reputation for being tough and relentless in the courtroom. He argued that Meliora's motive for the murder was her discovery of the affair between Nolan Ray and Verity. Lee painted a picture of a woman pushed to the breaking point by betrayal and emotional turmoil. He presented the surveillance footage of Meliora's car near Beaver Lake, the forensic evidence from the crime scene, and the conflicting statements she had given to the police. On the other side, the defense was led by attorney Bertha Anderson, a 39-year-old known for her calm demeanor and sharp legal mind. She argued that Meliora was innocent, and that the evidence was circumstantial. Anderson suggested that someone else could have committed the murder, perhaps out of jealousy or anger. She questioned the reliability of the surveillance footage and pointed out that no witnesses had seen Meliora commit the crime. Throughout the trial, Nolan Ray's family sat in the front row, watching the proceedings with a mixture of anger and sadness. Verity, in particular, struggled with the emotional weight of the trial. She had lost her stepfather and now faced the possibility of losing her mother to a long prison sentence. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for 3 days before reaching a verdict. On August 3, 2015, the jury found Meliora Gray guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was tense as the verdict was read. Meliora showed little emotion, while Nolan Ray's family wept and hugged each other. The local news immediately reported the verdict, and the story was covered extensively in the Fayetteville Observer. Judge Lisa Harvey sentenced Meliora to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She stated that the evidence clearly showed Meliora's guilt, and that the crime was a result of intense personal betrayal and anger. The judge expressed sympathy for Nolan Ray's family and hoped the sentence would bring them some measure of closure. The reaction to the verdict was mixed. Some in the community felt justice had been served, while others believed the sentence was too harsh, considering Meliora's difficult past and the emotional stress she was under. Nolan Ray's family, however, felt a sense of relief that the ordeal was over, and that the person responsible for his death was held accountable. The trial and sentencing marked the end of a tragic chapter for the Gray family and the community of Fayetteville. The murder and its aftermath had left deep emotional scars, but the verdict provided a sense of justice and a step toward healing. After Meliora Gray's trial and sentencing, life slowly began to return to normal for those involved in Nolan Gray's tragic murder case. For Meliora, now serving her sentence at the Arkansas Department of Correction, life took on a stark routine. She was allowed limited visits from family and friends, with strict rules governing her daily activities. The media coverage surrounding the trial gradually faded, replaced by new stories and events in Fayetteville, like the annual Bikes, Blues, and BBQ motorcycle rally. Verity Ford, now 19, returned to the University of Arkansas to continue her studies in psychology. She struggled with guilt and grief over her role in the affair that ultimately led to her stepfather's death. Verity sought counseling to help her cope with the emotional aftermath, and worked hard to rebuild relationships with her family. She distanced herself from media attention, focusing on her studies and volunteer work at local animal shelters. Meanwhile, Detective Halcyon Cook received recognition for her role in solving the high-profile case. She continued her work at the Fayetteville Police Department, investigating other crimes and mentoring younger detectives. Detective Ivor Jenkins transferred to the Northwest Arkansas Drug Task Force, where he applied his investigative skills to combating drug-related crimes in the region. In the community of Fayetteville, the impact of Nolan Ray's murder lingered. Neighbors and friends remembered him as a friendly and successful real estate agent who loved sailing on Beaver Lake. The local Rotary Club held a memorial service in his honor, and a plaque was installed at the Fayetteville Town Center to commemorate his life and contributions to the community. Nolan Ray's family, especially his first wife Edna, found solace in each other's company and support. Edna focused on her career at Harp's Food Stores and became involved in local charity events like the Susan G. Komen Race for the Cure in Bentonville. She remained vigilant about keeping her family close and supporting her grandchildren, who missed their stepfather dearly. As time passed, the scars left by Nolan Ray's murder began to heal, though the memory of the tragic events of April 2015 remained a part of Fayetteville's history. The community rallied around the Gray family, offering support and understanding as they moved forward from the ordeal. This tragic case of love, betrayal, and murder serves as a stark reminder of the complexity of human relationships and the devastating consequences of unchecked emotions. The tragic murder of Nolan Gray serves as a sobering reminder that hidden tensions can lurk beneath seemingly perfect lives. It underscores the importance of being vigilant and attentive to changes in the behavior of loved ones. This case teaches us about the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences that can arise from betrayal and unresolved conflicts. It also highlights the value of community support in times of crisis, as neighbors and friends come together to seek justice and heal from the trauma inflicted by such a heinous act.